Okay, so now that we have imported our files, as you can see on the right hand side here, let's talk about the Blender workspace. We're going to keep it very, very simple. So this cube is what you're presented with initially. It is not selected at the moment. You can select it by clicking on it, clicking off it, or on the right hand side you can select it over here. And we can see I've got our camera. When we click on that, it's selected, and we've got our light. When we click on that, it's selected. Now we can delete the light once it's selected just by pressing delete on our keyboard, and it's gone because we don't need it right now. The cube, once it's selected, we can move it around. Okay, now the easiest thing to do is press G on your keyboard, and you can see that it moves around the place. Very, very simple to move it up and down, but in a more specific direction. If we press Z on our keyboard, it snaps it to the Z axis, and you can drag it up and down. Or yes, X does exactly the same thing, and the same with Y on our keyboard. So it's very, very useful if we're moving things up and down. If you want to change the view, we can use our triad up here. And again, if I wanted to move it, I press G to move it around, and then Z, because that blue axis is vertical, and I can set the cube on the ground like so. Zooming in and out with our mouse wheel on our mouse, and then rotating by clicking the middle mouse wheel, holding it down, and dragging around. If I want to kind of offset the cube in terms of not have it perfectly in the middle of my screen, I can hold Shift, middle mouse wheel, and I can drag the scene left and right or up and down, and that gives me some control of where it's positioned. So that's quite useful. If I want to change the size of this, I can click on the cube and press S. I can drag out, and that's going to scale it, as you can see, and then just press Escape to come out of it. If I want to rotate my cube, I can press R on the keyboard, and I can rotate it around. Again, I can rotate it about the X-axis, the Y-axis, or the Z-axis, if I so wish, as you can see. And then just click when you're happy, and it'll be in the correct position if you want it like that. We don't actually need our cube, so I'm going to press delete on the keyboard. And what we'll see, if we zoom in, these are quite small objects, are our two parts. Now, I've got the step motor, and I've got another step motor, which is a bit confusing. The first step motor is the one we brought in, and then I think we probably had, what is this part over here? Okay, part 2. Okay, so we could drag that up. Oops. In fact, let's not worry because it's going to confuse everything. We can select those two there, and then we can move them by pressing G just out of the way, so we have our step motor from the initial one separated. Now, the only reason I brought that one in was to kind of show you how the Part Studios work. We could rotate that around, and then we can use numbers on our keyboard to rotate it. So I've clicked on the x-axis and rotated it by 90 degrees by pressing 90 on the keyboard. And then I can rotate it by my y-axis, which is this one, and I could go by 180 to have these wires vertically upright. I can then get my triad, move it into position, so press G, move it up, pressing Z so it's on that axis, like so, and then maybe I want to give it a bit of an angle. So if I go from above, I can rotate it about my Z axis like so, and then press G just to move it around. Now this is something you can play around with in your own time, trying to get everything in position as you wish. Let's just deselect. Yeah, that looks okay, doesn't it? Yeah, those will be okay. Maybe we want this to be a little bit lower down, like so. Okay. So we've kind of got our model in the position that maybe we want it to be. You can play around with it, see what you think looks good, what looks bad. So in terms of moving that, probably wanted it to move maybe just out this way a little bit. This is our basic use of the commands in Blender. Now we want to add a kind of infinite background, I suppose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top here, I'm going to click add, mesh, and then plane. And I have this plane ready to go, and I can press S to scale it up like so. And then we're going to add some more background just to make it a little bit more contained, so we can render it from some lower angles if we so wish. So I'm going to switch to edit mode up here, and I'm going to press on this edge like so. I'm going to click off so nothing is selected. I'm going to select these two edges. Okay, so I've dragged over that, selected that edge, that's at that edge, and I can select both edges by dragging over the corner, and it's kind of got both. I can press E on my keyboard, or I can extrude the edges like with that, and I'm going to be going upright. But at the moment it's all over the place. If I press Z, that kind of constrains it to the Z axis. Zoom out, and I've now got some nice walls, which is what I want. I like these to be smooth edges, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select over these three edges like so, and I'm going to bevel them by going to Edge and then Bevel Edges, or Control B is the shortcut. Drag it out eventually, and what you'll see is we have got some edges being beveled. Now that's more of a harsh bevel, so if we use this little drop down at the bottom here and change the segments and drag them up to, say, I don't know, probably 30 is going to be okay. We then have a bit more of a smooth section, as you can see, like this. I can then go back to object mode up here, and I now have a nice setup for this kind of background.